Hey everybody, Jam Creates here, doing another video, driving home from work. Hope you've been enjoying the content all week this week. It's been good to get back in the swing of things and having regular updates every day. It was terrible when I was sick. It was driving me nuts, not having videos. It's funny, you get used to it, you get into the swing of things, and then, you miss it. So anyway, what I wanted to talk about today is something that, I've been noticing more and more, and I know it's something that's been talked about now, for a number of years at this point, but I'm starting to feel like it's getting really, really serious at this point, and that is the quote-unquote death of the comic book industry. Now, I don't think that comic books as a medium, as an art form, are going to die. I don't think that they will go away and just never, ever be seen anymore. I just don't think that that's what's going to happen. I think that the comic book industry as we know it is facing a critical time where things will no longer be as they once were. And I think one of the problems was, and I know this is going to sound kind of strange because I know they had their biggest time, in the 90s, they were selling huge numbers, but I do think that one problem from that, one problem the industry has is in the 90s, because they were doing so well, comic book stores started popping up everywhere, and at some point, even before that, but at some point throughout that time, the comic book industry decided to pretty much no longer care about the newsstand or bookstore or, the candy shop or any of that stuff having comic books anymore. It was, hey, you buy comics in a comic book store. And it was fine when people were going. But what's happening now is comic book stores are getting, fewer and fewer all around the country. And, the problem is now when there's less places to buy a product, then there's less people buying that product. It's just not convenient. They're just not going to do it if they have no place to go do it. And in this day and age, to go out of your way to buy a comic is really kind of a big ask of a lot of customers. People don't really go to malls anymore like they used to. When people would go to a shopping mall, because it was the place to go, they would go to the mall and they'd walk around all day, and they would go to the arcade, and they would go stop by Auntie Anne's, and, if there was a comic book store in the mall, yeah, you'd stop in the comic book store, maybe pick up a few things. That kind of stuff is over. Malls are pretty much over. Let's be honest. Every mall in America is on its last legs trying to hang on. And that's why you'll notice things in malls now that you never saw before. Certain types of stores and things that they never had before, because they're dying. They're trying to hold on. And unfortunately for the comic book stores, if they were in a mall, now they're not. There's no foot traffic, and they've lost their, that, hey, I'm just going to wander in there and buy something. And the only person who I see fighting back against this trend is Peter Simeti from Alterna Comics, trying to put comic books everywhere. I know DC has their initiative to put their Walmart exclusive books that they have, but it's only like a couple of books, and it's Walmart. That's different. You know what I'm saying? That's very different from what Peter's doing. Peter's trying to get Alterna's comics everywhere. He wants spinner racks in dollar stores. He wants, he wants them on a newsstand. He wants them in bookstores. He wants them everywhere, I suggested to him more than once, and I'm sure he's weighing it, and he's trying to do it, and I don't, I don't know what exactly he's done with it, but I said to him more than once, that I really think Alterna Comics needs to cut a deal with those bookstores that are in every airport in the United States. It's like the same chain that has the bookstores in every frickin' airport in the country. I can't think of the name of it right now off the top of my head, but they all have the same name. He needs to cut a deal with them. A spinner rack with Alterna comics in there, whether it had just the floppies or if it had maybe floppies and graphic novels in there. Think about it. You're going on a 6-hour plane ride, or you're going to take your kid on a 3-hour plane ride, a 4-hour plane ride, whatever it might be. If you're flying cross country, 6 hours, going to Hawaii, 12 hours, you're going to be on an airplane. Guess what? If you're going to have your kid on an airplane, and where you're going to be on like even a 2-hour flight can be a nightmare sometimes with, when your kid is just bored. Here you go. Pick up a comic book. Even if you're just sitting in the airport and you're waiting for the flight, you have all your stuff packed and you don't want to start rifling through and pulling everything out before you get on the plane. Well, you know what? If you could walk into that bookstore and for $3 you could buy 2 comic books. Let's say you buy them like Psycho KO, or an issue of Psycho KO and an issue of Mighty Mascots just came out this week. Pick up Mr. Crypt, like any of that stuff. Like, that's all good, all ages fun stuff for that kids can read. You can feel safe with them reading it, and it gives them something to do when they're in the airport or on the plane. And a kid will reread a book, multiple times. Like, they might, on an airplane, they might read that same comic 3 times, just because that's what kids do. So I feel like that is a way, one way to go. But that's not a total solution. The solution, I feel like, needs to be to end the reliance on comic book stores. And I hate to say that, because the comic book stores are, they're run by everyday people, and they're small businesses, and these are business owners who went out on a limb and started a business probably because they love comics in the first place. And so it's a shame to say that, but they're dying. They're not going to last. We're going to hit a tipping point where it's no longer going to be worth it for any of these comic book stores to stay open. And the thing is, even the ones that maybe are still doing all right, they're going to get dragged down by all the ones that are going out of business, because what's bound to happen is, as more comic book stores go out of business, there is less demand for, they're not ordering comics through Diamond, and eventually Diamond is going to fold, because they're not going to be able to be a sustainable business if they're only distributing comics to 100 stores around the country. That's not enough to keep Diamond going. And eventually, if there's only that few stores around the country, well, let's be honest, the comic book companies at that point, they don't even need Diamond. They could just cut Diamond out. You could literally hire one dude to figure out the orders. If there's only 100 or even 1,000 comic book stores left in the country, which we're getting close to at this point, literally you could have one person in an office figuring out the orders and the shipping, and you could just ship it yourselves to the comic book stores. You could just use UPS or FedEx or whatever, and you could just ship it yourself. You could have your own people just pack them and ship them and be done with it. It really wouldn't be that hard. You're talking like one person to do all the computer, the tracking, and maybe like 1 or 2 people to pack it up and ship it, or even the same person, honestly. Like, you're talking about like literally 1 or 2 people could do that entire job at that point. That's pretty sad. And then once they've figured that out and they cut Diamond out altogether, then Diamond's gone. Now the whole business has changed. And I think this is what's coming. I don't think comic books are going to die. I think comic books will survive. I think the art form, the medium, will survive. I think the industry will die unless something changes. Something needs to change drastically. And I don't see any urgency on the part of Marvel, which, again, let's be honest, we need the market leaders to lead the change or nothing will ever happen. But I don't see any sort of urgency from Marvel. Like I mentioned earlier, DC is doing their thing with Walmart, but again, that's only a couple of books. It's not like it's a ton of stuff. It's not like the entire DC catalog goes to Walmart every week. You know what I mean? That's not happening. So I just don't see it. And I don't see Marvel. Marvel seems to not even care. So if that's the case, if the market leaders aren't going to really just whole hog make a change and do something, they're gonna crumble. And the little companies are the ones that will survive. It's just like the dinosaurs. The dinosaurs died out, and the little tiny mammals survived and eventually grew to rule the earth. Why? Because they didn't lumber. They weren't slow. They were able to survive on less. They didn't require those massive amounts of food like these giant companies require massive amounts of income. They're not nimble like the smaller companies are. And that's going to be a problem. And this is where I think from problem comes opportunity. And smaller companies, things like Alterna, like Ben Henderson is starting his cautionary comics. A lot of people are starting their own thing now. And that is where I think the future is going to go. Now, I don't think the Indiegogo route can last forever as a whole industry. I think it could last forever as a thing that people can do. But as an industry, I think at some point, there's got to be more to it than that, and the prices need to come down. I get it. We are right now where, I buy a lot of those books, and I love them, and they're worth the money to me because they're quality books, and they're collectibles kind of, in a way. And there's the rarity factor and all of that. But if there's to be a thriving comic book industry, there needs to be lower priced books like Alterna is making. They need to be easily available. They need to be impulse buys. They need to be where people are. You've got to go to the people. You could have the greatest product in the world, but if you live in, the middle of the Arctic, you're not going to sell much because there's no one else there. Who are you selling to? The penguins? The polar bears? They're not going to buy your stuff. They don't have any money. So that's what I'm saying. There needs to be a wholesale change, and people need to have the urgency. The big companies, the small companies, everyone needs to have the urgency of keeping this industry alive. If you care. If you don't care about the industry and you just want to be a dude who makes a comic book every so often, and you're going to crowdfund it, and you're going to make your money from that, and then that's what you're going to do, hey, more power to you. That's fine. That should be a sustainable model for, a person. I don't see that being a sustainable model for an entire industry, though. So anyway, I got to go because I'm picking up dinner for the fam, so I'll talk to you guys soon. Let me know what you think about this whole thing. Are we at the very top? Are we on the roller coaster? And right now we're at the very tippy top of the roller coaster as far as the industry is concerned. And do you care? Are you ready for things to change? Are you ready for it to all crash and burn so that something else can be built up from the ashes? A lot of times that has to happen. So let me know what you think. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing. It would be a very cool thing. And you can follow me on Twitter. I'm at jam_creates. And I'll talk to you guys soon, all right? Peace out.